Good Gab, sponsored by Skillskin, a nonprofit organization empowering individuals with disabilities through employment. All right, listeners, I didn't know I would be interviewing someone from my old childhood, but little did I know, we went to middle school together. This person's school. This person is Kerra Bower. This is the founder of Raze, and be prepared. Your mind's about to be blown. Kerra, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How's your morning going?
Morning's good. The snow is crazy right now.
It is, right?
It's insane trying to drive around out there, but got the kid off to school and started my meetings. And so, yeah, it's a good day.
Nice. Yeah, well, so what are you working on right now?
Oh, what am I not working on right now?
That's the real question.
So right now we obviously have Raze, and I've gone from being a teacher to a developer. And so trying to navigate that new world and get that project going. I also have a mental health project that I'm working on, a pilot that I've got going on. So
are you doing it within the context of like the kids? Or?
Oh yeah. Everything's about the kids. It all starts and ends with them, right?
Where did that come from? Why the kids? Why do you want to put all your effort there?
You know, when I look at the world as it is right now, I think that it's too late almost to start with us adults and really making that significant heart change. I think you start with the children who are still developing their world perspective, or the people that are still developing their world perspective. And you do it with authenticity and equity and love and nurture. And then they can grow up creating the world as it should be and it could be.
I love it. It's such a long-term view, though. It's like it's going to take years to see that pay off. We're talking the same language in our space. We help adults with disabilities at Skillskin, and we started asking, why aren't people working? Mm-hmm. And we're like, we got all these great jobs. And then we're like, oh, well, maybe we're not, the parents aren't talking about work. The schools aren't talking about work. So we got into the high schools. And we just realized this past year, it's like, we're too late. Mm-hmm. We got to jump into, middle schools. And I'm thinking in my mind, we're going to have to figure out some elementary school programs too, just to talk about work. Yes. So people can be ready when they come out and just change that conversation in the disability space. So yeah, we believe. Yeah.
We're on the same page. I often say I'm not turning around a race car. I'm turning around a ship. And that takes time and that takes forethought. Mm-hmm. And that's what this is about. It's not about saying like, okay, what's the quick fix to this? There is no quick fix to this. It's putting that, ingraining it at a very early age and letting it develop. And so even what you're talking about, right? Like that's futuristic dialogue. They have to see themselves doing it. And if you have parents that are so in the survival mode, they're not even thinking about thriving yet, right?
Yes.
And so it's giving.
So why would they have that conversation with their kids?
Exactly. So it's starting really early and letting them dream and then taking that dream and moving forward.
So your school sounds cool. That philosophy. Tell us more about that.
So Raze is a early learning development center that is based in Black excellence and joy. It's a culturally based preschool and development center. Nothing new to Spokane.
That seems unique.
It's not. It's, we have them all over Spokane. We have the Salish School. We have Celia's Place, right? We've got these great organizations that are doing this work. What we don't have is one that's based in Black American history, excellence, and joy. And so it's a long story of kind of how I got here, but that's really what Raze is about.
Well, we'd love to hear a little of the story.
Let's dive.
Yeah, no doubt, Kerra.
So I actually started with an organization called People to People Ambassador Programs. We traveled students all over the world.
They're out on the West Plains, right?
Yes, that's where they were. And I worked there. I started like in the basement, just doing calls, and got to the point where I spent 3 weeks in Australia on the Olympic campgrounds helping run the logistics for a sports program. Loved doing that. Got promoted, did some work within state, so ran a lot of our national programs or assisted with those programs. And then my husband at the time and we decided we were going to start our family. And what else do you do at 23, right? You start a family. And so had this beautiful little boy and realized I didn't want to travel anymore.
Right.
You know,
You want
2
to
weeks
be
out of the
there.
month. Yeah, I wanted to be with my kid. And so I knew education and I knew children. And so, and because I come from a family of 7, when I was younger, I had started like a community preschool and school program that I ran out of a trailer in our neighborhood with all the neighborhood kids.
You just see a need?
You know what? I did. I also like telling kids what to do. So
Put it together.
That was my 12-year-old self. But it was great. It was something that we got to do, and I got to experience community. Anyway, so I decided I was going to start a little, I was going to babysit out of my house so I could be with my son. And over the course of the next 7 years, that was in 2007. In 2009, I got licensed and really started running the in-home and realized it's more than just babysitting. One of the things I started seeing, though, was the homework that would come home and the expectations, right? So we were 24 hours, 7 days a week at the time. And so I had kids from all over Spokane that were a part of my center. And I would see the homework come home for the same grade, but it was just different. The expectations, right? So maybe up on the hill, they would say, parents need to sign off on this reading log. Whereas maybe in West Central, it was just like, sit down and read with your parents, right? There was no accountability. There was no expectation of the family to be involved in this child's education.
What a unique position to be in, to be able to see those differences too.
Yeah.
Just through homework.
And I just started feeling this need and seeing this gap. And I thought, I want my kids. And at the time I was in West Central Spokane, the heart, I was, Oak. I was there. And I said, I want these kids that come from this neighborhood. I want them to be the ones that walk in the classroom and the teacher is like, where'd that kid come from? Right?
Yeah. Good goal.
Yeah. And so that became my focus. West Central went through some changes. We'll just say that. And it was no longer safe for me to have an in-home center there. And I've talked to the community cop program there about that. But we went through that process. I wound up moving into Little Scholars in 2013, the building that was there. We moved into that.
Where's that at?
It's on North Monroe.
Okay.
So just outside of West Central in Central Spokane. So the same, community had access.
Real central to, our whole community.
Yes. And so we did that work. And then, but during that time, the Salish school was coming in, and they actually took the building that we were originally going to go into.
Dang them.
And so, and it was okay because I wasn't ready, right? I had 23 kids, and I was terrified to go from my home into, a whole building. And so I passed on that building, got the one that we were in, and but the Salish school came in, and I remember reading about it and kind of following it because we were all coming in at the same time. And it
was cool. Like I remember the same.
Yes.
Like reading, going, what is happening out here?
And I was like, you can do that? Like you can just choose to teach children about actual history and not water it down and be proud of like who you are and who your people are and where you got. Like I didn't know you could do that. And so I thought it was a great idea, and I thought, how awesome would it be to have something like that for the Black community? But over time, realizing it shouldn't just be for the Black community, because to be a Black American is to be an American.
Sure.
And so having that bridge was really important for me. And so that's where the idea was born out of. And so I just slow walked the research. I'm building a whole new center. I did not have time to start a second center at the same time. So I just gathered an article here, thought about some things over there. And then 2019 comes, and I get a call from Luke Jasmine of Parkview Early Learning Center, and also the governor's representative now. I get a call from him, and he's like, hey, I forgot to tell you have a meeting in 20 minutes. We're meeting with Commerce. And I was like, what? And so I'm like, all right. Luke calls. I'm on my way. And I get down there, and Department of Commerce were there, and they were like, hey, we just finished up a study, and it found that Black students in Spokane are the most underserved in all of Washington State as it pertains to early learning. What do we do?
The whole state?
In the whole state.
Oh, man. So
in
huge
the whole
need.
state, right. Now, like I said, I'd been collecting articles, so I already knew some of the disparities our state was facing. For instance, in 2016, we suspended and expelled 6,000 K through third graders, and 6% and our Black boys specifically were expelled or suspended 6 times more than their peers. Black girls were second at 4%. And so I knew we were facing some really serious deficits. And so we went into this conversation. They gave us a needs-based grant. We applied for the needs-based grant, won that, started the work. Like, what's the need in Spokane? Do we need more child care centers? Yes, we do. Came back, we got awarded the feasibility grant. And that's when I said, okay, we got to talk about what this will look like. Yeah. And so I pitched the idea of Raze, and the group went nuts and we're like, yes, that's what we're doing. And then did a feasibility study and really involved the community in every way possible. And we've been working on it ever since. And then I applied for the Early Learning Facilities Grant, and that was $1 million. We were awarded that. And then it was on to all the other great things that we've been doing.
That's incredible. During your research, is there anything like that attributed like that staggering statistic of, people being expelled, Black boys and girls being expelled at that higher rates?
Yeah.
Like, that's nuts.
So obviously I come from a community where that wasn't really a surprise to me, right? Even in my own center, we've had moments where I'm like, okay, let's sit down and talk about why we want to like look at letting this kid or putting this kid on a disciplinary plan. And we can talk about that. One of the most staggering studies that I found was the one that Yale did. Yale University put eye tracking software on teachers of every race, right? Or not every race, but of multiple races. And showed them a group of students, and they said, there's a behavior happening in this classroom. Can you tell us who is responsible for the behavior? Every single one of those teachers looked at the Black boy first. They assumed...
There's just like this cultural bias that is in place.
Yes, and it's an implicit bias, right? Well, for some, it's an implicit bias. And so we know that, and that's regardless of ethnicity. They look to the Black child, the Black boy first, and the Black girl second. The crazy thing is there was no behaviors in the classroom. There was nothing actually happening.
So you can just, human brain can just be prompted into that. It makes me think about my own experience here in Spokane. I grew up like on 13th and Fisk. I went to Franklin Elementary, and it was an interesting time because everyone was going to Libby School at the time for middle school, and so we were all going down there. We had the East Central part of the community. They went to Franklin, Grant, and Sheridan. We all, would play like football, Lincoln Park together. We go down to Grant Park and play together. So it's like I knew a lot of that community. And so when they got rid of Libby and we all went up to the South Hill Chase, we were the very first school, or first class in that school, and it was insane. And I remember we called it like race wars up there. It was unreal. And it was the teachers. And I saw that with my own eyes, picking out Black boys and Black girls and suspending them. We are all shitheads. There's no doubt about it. But they're the ones who had to go home.
Yeah.
And it's weird to think about, that was a long time ago, but it happened. Like I saw it with my own eyes.
Yeah. I feel like you and I were at Chase at the same time, maybe.
Yeah.
I was either the first year or the second year, but very cool.
Were you class of 2000 for graduating?
2001.
Okay, yeah,
So
you're right behind me.
Yeah.
You were there.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, so when you're in 8th grade, so that year right before you got there, that was an
crazy.
unreal.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, man.
And I remember a lot of effort went into the school that next year. And what was your experience like when you were up there?
I do not even remember Chase. I am not going to front. I really don't. I had.
But good. It was like a jail.
It was like Chase. I had my first bullying experience, and so that's where a lot of my focus was. But I also had a lot of things going on at home that I just wasn't. Chase is kind of like a blur for me, but yeah.
That's interesting. Well, we're the same age.
Yeah.
That was interesting. That was my experience back then. And just so I can see that.
Yeah.
Well, so now Raze is starting to happen.
Yes.
Like, where are you in this process?
Yes. So So one of the things that was really important to me is that I purchased property, right? This is a for us, by us organization. I did not want to lease property. I didn't want to go into debt and not own anything. And so it took us a while. I was actually awarded that grant in 2021, right? We're at 2024 now. So I was awarded the grant. It took about a year and a half to find a building because it is going to have 170 slots. 170 slots. It's a extended hour center, so we're open until 5:30 or 11:30 p.m. We needed a totally different space in the building just for sleeping and for having that night program. And so it took a while. We found the building. It's the old Department of Licensing building on Lidgerwood up north that everybody went and got their license from.
Where we all stayed in line forever.
Yes.
Right by Numerica.
Oh my goodness, we all have
great building,
crazy
though, I
stories.
bet.
It's an amazing building. It's an amazing building in a beautiful, wonderful neighborhood. And so 9,964 square feet, and that's where we will be Monday through Friday, 5:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. with opportunities for overnight and weekend care as well.
Wow. And when will you launch?
That's a great question.
Okay, well, that's not the wrong question then. How do people get involved then?
Yes.
And so we can help support because we know the need is there.
Yes.
Like, how do we support?
So we right now are going to be submitting for our permit kit here within the next couple of weeks, and then hopefully be starting construction. The construction process is going to be probably about 6 months. In the meantime, while we're working on that, so our open date right now is going to hopefully be September 1st, which is perfect because it's right in time for the new school year. And that's what we'll follow with our programming. How can you get involved right now? I am doing our final listening session. It started with listening sessions. It's going to end with listening sessions. We're doing listening sessions on the interior design. So I've been working with a design team, Mint Design. They are fantastic. And just making sure that it feels like you are being immersed in Black culture when you walk through the door. And so we're asking community to come out and tell us how we did. Tell us what we need to put on the walls and what we need to do to make this environment feel welcoming. So we have 3 listening sessions coming up. The first one is starting on Tuesday. That one is full, but we have the 6th and the 20th, and then we have a set of listening sessions for parents, grandparents, and guardians. And that's where we're wanting to know, how do we communicate with you? As a Black parent or a parent of a Black or Black identifying child, or as somebody who is just a part of a community where other Black people are, how do you want us to communicate with you, and what does that feel like and look like? And then a final set of listening sessions for teachers. One of the worst things that you can do is create an early learning space and not talk to the people who are going to be doing the actual work.
Right.
And understand, how do you need to be treated to feel valued, to feel heard, and so that you can do your best work in the classroom. And then we'll conclude with that.
That's brilliant. Yeah. There's something that the disability community says, like, nothing about us without us.
Without us, that's
and
right.
The listening sessions that you're talking about, just, it's making me think about, like, our organization and how we're connecting with people. And I don't know if we listen enough. There's something just kind of like struck the chord. Yeah. Because if you do, you're going to get that feedback of, like, what the real need is. Yeah. And if you build something like let's just say I build something that I think is great and, it's the best thing, but it isn't great to the people we're serving, then what are you doing? You haven't heard.
And it's like looking from the outside in, right? And then telling them what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and I see what you need. Don't worry. In education and in the medical field, we've got that down pat. Like, we are educated and we know best. Follow me, right? That's not what this is about. And I do a lot of work around early learning providers. And these are people who they are under-resourced, they are underpaid, they are overworked, but because it's a heart job, I always say that this is heart work, right? We just know that they're going to continue to perform. And if you don't sit down and you don't ask them, what does your classroom need to look like? What does it need to feel like for you, right? It's one thing to have a standard operating procedures of what you need to do to make this the best place ever. But do you have a standard operating procedures of how to treat your staff? If your
Good
staff
call.
comes in and says, hey, I don't have, like, I'm experiencing homelessness or houselessness. Do you have a standard operating procedure for that? Do you know where to go? And you're not just sending them, but are you walking with them through that process?
Right. Not call 211 or 311.
Exactly. Like, what does that do for the person that you're entrusting with the most valuable thing our community has, if you're not walking beside them? And so that's the other part of Raze for me, is we are there to support and help our instructors and our teachers as much as we can.
Okay, so as this kicks off, as this community builds and forms, are people that are, let's just say they have kids in District 81 and they're like, no, we want to be part of Raze. Can they just like choose to be a part of your school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a child care center. It's
Yeah.
preschool, right? So we go all the way from birth to 12 years, which means we have a before and after school program.
Okay.
They will have, so our school agers, once they hit kindergarten, they would go to District 81, but we would pick them up before or drop them off before
and after. Okay, now I'm making that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I absolutely recommend staying, like, if your child is not registering for kindergarten, keeping them in that preschool environment so they get as much intense one-on-one specialized care as humanly possible before you throw them into a school district, right? Like, that's what we want to see, is that these students get as much attention and care as humanly possible before you put them into, like, the big machine that is
School.
public education. Yeah. And then the other thing that I would just mention is that one of the great things about Raze, so in my in-home, I used to do transportation where you didn't have to be from my neighborhood to have access to my center.
I bet that was hard to just do, though.
No, it wasn't easy, and I was still building my family. So there was one point where I was like 9 months pregnant, and I'm like,
Driving the van?
I'm driving this big Sprinter van, and I've got all my babies in the back, and then getting out with the car seats. That was great. But so at Raze, that's one of the things that we'll be doing as well. You don't have to be in our neighborhood to have access to our center. So we'll have places around town that will have pickup spots for our students.
Well, so that's great too, because we all know Spokane's pretty white. So
It is.
and people of color living all over town. So to be
Yes.
able to access your program,
Yeah.
and transportation's always a barrier.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
for
And
everybody.
to be clear, this is a program for everyone, right? So yes, we want Black community to bring their children to Raze because we have programming that is specific to who we are and the contributions that the people that look like me have made. But it's not enough for just us to be at the table, right? Your kids have to be at the table, and everyone else's children have to be at that table, because we can't just sit around and talk amongst ourselves about how great the contributions of Black America has been. If you really want to raise RAZE, which is tear down, dismantle, and do away with, if you want to do that to the narrative for the Black child in education, it takes all of us having that same understanding.
Makes sense. We had a guest on, Katara. Do you know Katara?
I do.
Yeah.
I love Qatar.
Well, me too.
Yes.
She said something similar to that. She's just looking at me. She's like, Steve, we got to get everybody on board. Like, this is our community.
Yes.
We have to, this is it.
Right.
So let's do it.
Right.
And that makes sense. So
Could you imagine a world where the conversation is no longer like, oh, Black History Month is coming, so let's make sure we, talk about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, right? But if, the names of, Happy Watkins was just as synonymous with, what Rosa Parks did, or if Sandy Williams' name was just as, talked about at the dinner table as anyone else's, we're not just talking about, national heroes. We're also talking about the local heroes.
Our community.
Our community, right? Have you guys seen the book that Stephanie Courtney wrote? And it's entitled Our Community.
I haven't.
And it is literally local, present, active Black heroes in Spokane.
I'm going to be
that
picking
are
it up. I'm going to check
it's
it out.
amazing. It's amazing. It's actually here at the library. But
Our Community.
It's called
All
Our
right,
Community.
listeners, check that book out.
Yeah. She's amazing. She's also doing some amazing work here in Spokane around Black maternal health. But at the end of the day, this is our history that has been almost erased from us, right? I tell this story when I talk about Raze. I tell this story about my grandfather, and my grandfather had a 3rd grade education, and he was a cowboy. And I probably learned more about moonshine and campfires than any 4 or 5-year-old should have known. But I grew up hearing about the world of cowboys and swimming horses and all these amazing things that he used to do. And then the crickets. Right? Nobody talks about black cowboys.
No.
But to find out that 1 in 4 Old West cowboys were black.
So yeah, this is an entire community. That's why haven't we heard that?
And that's huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of American history and pride, right? Like, why aren't we talking about these things? And that's why it's important. Bass Reeves is one of my favorite black heroes. They just made like a whole TV series about him. He's somebody we're going to be studying at Raze. Just an amazing U.S. Marshal, first black ever U.S. Marshal, arrested
just picking up the bad guys.
Yes, arrested over like 6,000 Old West criminals. Arrested his own son, and he only out of all of those people,
like a real badass.
Yeah, he pulled his gun. I think like something like 40 times. I read.
So
but
more.
He played
legend.
He's a legend, right? But do we know that we actually have our own black U.S. Marshal here in Spokane? We have one, which is crazy for Spokane. We have one.
That means we clean his office too, because we clean that federal
Do you
building
really?
where the U.S. Marshals. Yeah,
well, his name is
good.
Mike.
All
He's
right.
amazing. But it's understanding that we have beautiful history that is contained in Black excellence nationally and here in Spokane as well.
Incredible, Kerra. Anything else that you're thinking about that our listeners, you'd like to share with our listeners, or to know about Raze, or just your vision for Spokane?
Yeah, my vision for Spokane is that we understand that Black excellence is moving into everything that we do, we experience, and I don't want it to be unique. I don't want it to be something special. I want it to be everyday conversation, things that we already know. I want Raze to be a place where people are proud to send their children, and that they realize it isn't just for one particular person. We all have something to benefit from understanding the history of Black excellence and joy. And the quicker we get involved, right? Get on our wait list. Go on our website, razethenarrative.com, R-A-Z-E, thenarrative.com. Sign up for the wait list. Get on our newsletter, our newsletters. Get to know us, find out more. Call me. I'll talk all day about Raze. And know that we are here for this community, Monday through Friday, 5:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. And if the need is there, we can be open weekends and overnight as well.
Wow.
And we're hiring.
You heard it here. The best of the best, though.
Yes, absolutely.
Kerra, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. This was wonderful.